Hey, what's happening? What's going on? This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect right here on Facebook/YouTube. So tonight I want to talk about Savannah and the Tybee Island and the Gullah Geechee people. And the reason why, because um, this past week, well, a couple of days ago, I went to Savannah, Georgia. And I had the opportunity to go out there and experience some of the great things, the most beautiful thing about Savannah. Now, one of the things I happened to look up while I was coming across some information to gather together was about the Tybee Island, which was very interesting, and the role that this island played as far as the slaves is concerned. It was an area where the slaves were quarantined. And the word for quarantine is lazzaretto. Lazzaretto, which is the Italian word meaning quarantine. So I'm going to get into all of that. And then also I'm going to talk about the Gullah Geechee people of coastal Georgia, which of course, which is Savannah area, St. Simon, Tybee Island, etc. Yeah, so I'm going to get into that. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get started about the information about the Atlantic slave trade in Savannah. All right, so here I'm on the website. So the website is georgiaencyclopedia.org. And the title is Atlantic Slave Trade to Savannah. So it goes like this. Over the course of 48 years, Savannah played an integral role in the Atlantic slave trade. Although Savannah's participation in the slave trade was initially minuscule, the port of Savannah has historical transnational importance as a receiver of enslaved West Africans during the late 18th century. Despite a ban on African slavery in early Georgia, enslaved people and slavery were an integral part of the colony's development. Following the settlement of Savannah in 1733, enslaved people from South Carolina cleared land, tended cattle, and labored on farms. By the late 1740s, enslaved people from South Carolina were openly sold in Savannah. The legalization of slavery in Georgia in 1750 by the trustees who governed the Georgia colony extended an official imprimatur to a reality that already existed. So, hey, Deshaun, what's going on? What's up? So, slavery was not legal in Georgia. However, hold on, can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. Hold on. Give me a second. All right, I hope you can hear me. If not, let me see. Let's see something. I hope you can hear me now. Anyways, as I was stating, so slavery was not legal in Georgia, but there was practices going on. Okay. And one of those practices was in Savannah, where they were selling slaves openly. So slavery in Georgia did not become legal until 1750. 1750, that's when slavery became legal. Now, you all got to know Carolinas and Georgia, they right next to each other. All right. So all of those are colonies. Okay. Those were Georgia and the Carolinas, South Carolina, North Carolina was part of the 13 colonies. Because that's how it started off. Before it became United States, it started off with 13 colonies. And Georgia and South Carolina happened to be one of them. And the Virginias and Delaware. Okay. And I believe Pennsylvania and so many others. But they all were, but anyhow, Georgia and South Carolina, they right there. They right close to each other. So when you leave Savannah, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia is like an hour and a half away from Charleston. Charleston is just right over the other side. So it's right there to each other. Now, again, the history connection is because slavery was legal in South Carolina. There was a lot of slaves there. However, they brought the slaves on over to Savannah. And when they brought them over to Savannah, they were selling them out in the open before it became legalized. And so that's what took place. So that's how Savannah got involved with slavery. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So it says that the repeal of the ban on African slavery marked the beginning of Savannah's involvement in the Atlantic slave trade. Savannah propitious location near the Atlantic Ocean and the coastal regions, navigable rivers and waterways allow commercial vessels to enter and leave the area easily. Merchants, planters, and politicians actively directed the city's involvement in the trade until 1798, when the Georgia legislature banned the slave trade from Africa. Now, remember, they banned the slave trade from Africa. However, the slave trade was still going on. It was still happening. It was still taking place. And then goes on to say, the demand for African slave labor increased with the establishment of Rice and Sea Island cotton plantation in Georgia Low Country. As rice became a profitable export crop in coastal Georgia, merchants in Savannah imported Africans from the rice and grain coast of West Africa, which extended from the Senegambian region to Sierra Leone. Before enslaved West Africans were imported directly, Savannah's merchants and planters secured Africans captives via the intercolonial trade with South Carolina and the Atlantic trade with the Caribbean. So in 1747, the merchant firm of James Habersham and Francis Harris built one of several commercial vessels, the schooner Endeavor, to engage in the intercolonial trade. The Endeavor exported goods to South Carolina for re-export to Britain and imported enslaved people from South Carolina for sale in Savannah. The success of the Endeavor led to the construction of additional commercial vessels that engaged in the intercolonial trade and the Atlantic trade with the Caribbean and African. During the early period of Savannah's involvement in the trade from 1755 to 1767, 63% of enslaved people imported into Savannah originate from the Caribbean. Wait a minute. Let me read that again. Because, see, this is important. This is why it's important to understand this. The successor of the Endeavor led to the construction of additional commercial vessels that engaged in the intercolonial trade and the Atlantic trade with the Caribbean and Africa. During the early period of Savannah's involvement in the trade, from 1755 to 1767, 63% of enslaved people imported into Savannah originated from the Caribbean, and 24% came directly from Africa, rice, and grain coast. Now, why did I read on it? Because we got people who thinking that there was no Caribbeans, there was no people that came from the Caribbeans over to America as slaves. There was trade going on between North America or the Americas and the Caribbean. So when there was trade going on between these two, that's why they were able to import slaves and export slaves. Okay. So it wasn't just slaves that were just coming from Africa directly. I mean, all of them came from Africa directly, right? But there were those who were dropped off in the Caribbean. And then the European went and got some more slaves from Africa. So they gathered up some more slaves from the Caribbean, right? The Africans that was already in the Caribbeans, and brought them over to America, to the southern part of America. And they went on ahead and gathered up some more slaves from Africa, from West Africa, and brought them over to America. Okay? So to dispel this mythology that there was no Caribbean people or people from the Caribbean brought over into Americas as slaves, that's a lie. They were enslaved Africans that was transported over to America from the islands. So yes, there was a case. See, again, there's more to slavery than what we think. There's a lot to it. You got to go in details. It's a lot more into it. So it's a lot of information, but you got to study it, because you'll be surprised. You'll be amazed what you thought you knew, you really didn't know. But I'm going to continue. And it says also, during the intermediate period from 1768 to 1771, 86% of enslaved people imported to Savannah originated from Africa. All right. Now let's go ahead and let's scroll down just a little bit. Well, let's read this part right here. During the American Revolution, which lasted from 1775 to 1783, the Continental Congress Non-Importation Agreement of 1775, which banned all slave trade, disrupted the Atlantic trade to Savannah. From 1778 to 1783, the hostilities between the American colonists and the British extended to Africa as a result of a French alliance with the American colonies in 1778. This alliance exacerbated hostilities between Great Britain and France, who also were waging war in Africa to maintain zones of influence over important slave forts along the West African coast, such as St. James and the Gambia River, St. Louis in Senegal, and Gullah Island off the coast of Senegal. Throughout their involvement in the Atlantic slave trade, merchants and planters in Savannah imported enslaved people from St. James and Gullah Island to a British significant supply zone for captive workers. Other supply zones for the Savannah market included the British colony Sierra Leone, located along the windward coast of West Africa. After the Revolutionary War, the slave trade to Savannah resumed. Between 1784 and 1798, enslaved West Africans accounted for 78% of enslaved people imported to Savannah. See? That's the information. Now let's look at the Liverpool Trade and Lazarito. So merchants and ship owners in Liverpool, England, maintained intercontinental communication with merchants and plantation owners in Savannah. The Liverpool Trade replaced the defunct Royal African Company, which operated from the Port of London from 1672 to 1752. The earliest direct shipment of West Africans to Savannah occurred via the Liverpool Trade in 1766, when the Liverpool sloop Mary Barrow arrived in Savannah from Senegal with 78 enslaved people. The Liverpool merchants, John and Matthew Strong, the owners of the Mary Barrow, instructed the ship's captain, David Morton, to consign the men and women to the mercantile firm of Broughton and Smith in Savannah. All right, so now let's go back up. What were these slaves brought here for? They were brought to places like Savannah to be sold off, and also they were brought to Georgia for rice and grain. Okay, so Georgia is known for its rice, but known for its grain and its cotton. So you had cotton fields out here in Georgia. Okay, all right. So that's what they brought the enslaved Africans for, because they were able to labor. They were so used to being able to, work on the ground and stuff like that, but not in harsh condition, not the way the Europeans had them. So the Europeans saw what type of work they was able to do. They brought them over and said, hey, okay, we can get them to, get us some rice, grow some rice for us, some grains. So if you guys don't know what grains are like, grains is wheat. So that's where wheat come from, grains. And, if you eat wheat bread, that's made out of grains. All right. And of course, you know what cotton is, right? Cotton, not just, you got different form of cotton. You got cotton that you use for your ears, cotton that you use like cotton balls for like when you have wounds or something. Like if you put alcohol on your wound, you can use the cotton ball to cover it up. And you also got cotton that's made for clothing material. So a lot of the clothes that we wear are made out of cotton. They're made out of cotton. Give me one moment. All right, so the clothes that we wear, most of our clothing material is either made out of cotton or polyester or wool, etc. But for the most part, it's cotton. All right, so a lot of them were on the cotton fields, on the rice field, and they were also working with the grains. Let's go further on. All right, so it says the voyage across the Atlantic Ocean from West Africa to Savannah lasted between 4 and 6 months. The duration of the voyage, combined with the prolonged confinement, increased the occurrence of infectious disease. To prevent the spread of disease in Savannah. Now, this is where Tybee Island comes into place. So Tybee Island come into place, right? And they built a quarantine area on Tybee Island for people who have some type of infectious disease. So for those enslaved Africans who had infectious disease, they were left on those quarantine islands to be treated. Okay. Now, many of them unfortunately died. Then there was those of them that survived. So yeah, that's what. So it wasn't the center part of Tybee Island, but it was like the west end of the island, like on the far west. They built the area, like a little quarantine area, where they put the enslaved Africans that had some type of infectious disease. All right. So check this out. It says to prevent the spread of disease in Savannah, city officials in 1767 authorized the construction of a 9-story quarantine facility, a lazarito, which stands for the pest house, on the west end of Tybee Island. Before entering the Savannah port, enslaved people brought directly from West Africa remained quarantined at the lazarito, where a physician who determined if they harbor infectious disease inspected them. Diseased individuals remained at the facility. Those who died from disease were buried on the west end of Tybee Island. In the last years of the century, Georgia officials enacted laws restricting Savannah's involvement in the Atlantic slave trade. So in 1798, the state legislature banned the direct importation of Africans. This measure preceded by 10 years the national ban on the slave trade from Africa, which led to an illegal slave trade that persisted for many decades. The deep waterways of coastal Georgia offer good harbor for this trade, which continued as late as 1858. When the slave ship Wanderer landed near St. Simon Island with more than 400 African captives. So even after slavery was banned, of course, what did the South do? They continued on with slave practice. They did it illegally. They still brought slaves over here because they needed them to keep up with the agriculture here in the South. So they continued to bring them over. Even when the state of Georgia said, no, we don't need no more slaves. Slavery is over with. It's illegal. It's banned. They said, well, you know, deep down inside, they was like, well, we're going to go against the grain. We're going to do what we want to do anyhow. We're going to bring them on over because they've been making money for us. So we ain't going to stop. We ain't going to stop these folks. These folks ain't going to stop our money. They ain't going to stop our process. This is how we build our economics here in the South. So we're going to do it just by bringing more slaves. And that's how the South was able to build a better economy through slavery. So slavery was very popular in the South. The North been done stopped. The North been done said, you know what, we not going to continue on with slavery up here. They stopped before the South did. Okay? The South said, no, we're going to keep it going because we need this money. You know what I'm saying? Well, we got to keep the economy up. You know, this is the only way we know, you know, we got to get some type of income. And these folks been giving us income now. So you're going to tell us that we can't have no more slaves over here? Nah, well, then how we going to get our money? We're going to get our money. And that's what they did. They kept it going until slavery was stopped altogether. All right. So let's go ahead and let me show you the website for those of you that want to look up for more information. Okay, the website is New Georgia Encyclopedia. New Georgia Encyclopedia. This is the website. And look under history and archaeology. Okay. All right, then. So now I want to show you guys the picture of Tybee Island. So I happened to be fortunate to go to the beach. And the beach is very beautiful. I ain't gonna lie, it's so beautiful. It was just lovely. It's like just being able to feel the spirit of your ancestor all around you. Just feel the atmosphere of what your ancestor had to endure, what they had to go through. So when I went on the beach, I felt like I was in the presence of my ancestors. I felt like the ancestor was just with me. You see what I'm saying? It's just that spiritual connection that you have. But I just want to show you guys the picture. So right here, this is the picture. I know you can't really see it, but this is the picture of Tybee Island. All right, they had the Hotel Tybee, and they had many other places. So this is the island where it's a beach now, well, of course, but this is the beach. This is a nice little beach right here. Yep, very beautiful. So what I know is about Savannah. Savannah has that island feel to it. You know what I'm saying? It has that island feel. It's like when you go to Savannah, it's like you going to like an island or like a beach. Like even when you go to downtown Savannah, And it's very nice. It's very lovely. I mean, it is lovely and beautiful. Downtown Savannah is beautiful. Um, it's but it just had that island feel to it. It's like you're on the island. So I was thinking to myself, I said Savannah must have been an island city at one time. I mean, because like the trees look like they're palm. Like there's some pine trees, but then you will see the palm, like the trees that's like very similar to the ones in South Carolina. Now, I've been to Myrtle Beach, and this was a long time ago when I was young. But if y'all seen the pictures of trees in South Carolina, they look just like the ones in Savannah. Because again, South Carolina and Savannah is right there by each other. Charleston and Savannah right there. They very close. But anyways, yes, Savannah has that, it has that island vibe. You know what I mean? It's really nice. It's very beautiful. A very lovely city. I enjoy it. I love the downtown. Downtown is not that big, but it's beautiful. It's a lot to do, and it brings a lot of attraction. And they also got a thing called the riverboat. So I never got the opportunity to get on the riverboat, but the boat is pretty big. And like when you're downtown, you're gonna see like the big old river over there. It's just really, really beautiful. It's so magnificent. And there's a bridge right across from it too. It's beautiful. And then, well, yeah, right on the left-hand side is the bridge. And then across from downtown, you can see like the hotel, the convention center. They got the Savannah Convention Center over there. Then they got I think it's the Hilton Hotel over there too. It's just beautiful. Yeah, I could do that one of these days, but it's gonna be kind of hard because it depends on people's schedule and depends on where the people are located. So I would love to do the trip for people to go to the beach and go to Savannah, but that's something that I would have to be able to try to work on as far as what's people's schedule like and where they're located, what's the meeting location where we can all meet up and where we all can go and go check out the area. But yeah, but that sounds like a good idea. That really does. It sounds like a great idea. I think I can do that, but it's just something that has to be like organized. Like, yep. But anyways, yeah, it's just like the attraction is so beautiful. I just can't. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like it just seems so. It's that serenity behind Savannah. You know what I'm saying? It's that serenity. It's the vibe. It has that cultural vibe to it as well. Because as I mentioned about the Gullah Geechee people, downtown earlier, before I came back, I happened to come across two ladies who happened to be Gullah Geechee, the griots. The griots is an African term for the teacher, the somebody who does who's a storyteller. So these women were telling the story about the Gullah Geechee people and the Mende people, right? And how and also get into a little bit about the slave trade in Savannah and whatnot. So I posted up the video on my YouTube channel, but if you guys get a chance, make sure y'all check out that channel. So yeah, I mean, it's just the beauty of it. It's beautiful. It just has that. It has that vibe and it has that feel to it. It's like you're on the island. It's like you almost like you're going to Miami or something. And I never been to Miami, but it's like that. It's kind of like that because it's just that vibe. It's just the aura of the serenity of it. I mean, but every place have its bad and it's worse too. So I'm quite sure there's some bad places in Savannah that I wouldn't want to be at or I wouldn't want to live, but overall it was a beautiful experience. It really was. But let's go ahead and get to some more information. So right here's the article. It's called You're Out of Your Place by Jeffrey R. Finney and Amy E. Potter. And the source is Southeastern Geographer, volume 58, number 1. And it was published in 2018. Okay. So the publishing company, or who was it published by? It was the University of North Carolina Press. So it goes on the Black mobility on Tybee Island, Georgia, from civil rights to Orange Crush. So now I'm going to zoom this up just a little bit. All right, and I'm just going to read some of this. It says, Tybee Island, Georgia has a problematic racial history. During the Jim Crow era, the popular beach town was segregated and off limits to Savannah's majority African-American population. More recently, Tybee officials have actively worked to end Orange Crush, an annual spring beach bash attended mostly by students from historically Black colleges and universities from within the region. Partygoers and promoters of Orange Crush have engaged in ongoing clashes with residents and Tybee officials for nearly 30 years, charging them with racial discrimination and profiling. Residents express frustration with traffic, trash, crime, and noise and have put forth measures that seek to put an end to the annual event. Utilizing archival research, semi-structured interviews, and participant observation, this study will situate Orange Crush within a larger framework centered on tourism, mobilities, and Black sense of place. All right. So let's go ahead and skip down. All right, so historical geography of Black mobility on Tybee Island. Tybee is a barrier island off the coast of Georgia that lies at the mouth of Savannah River. Historically, it was an early colonial borderland, serving as a strategic location between Spanish and British America. Unlike other colonies, slavery was initially banned in the founding of Georgia colony in 1732. This decision was later reversed, and 2 decades later, in 1768, Tybee became a quarantine station for enslaved Africans and other immigrants. A Georgia historic marker on Highway 80 reads, 104 acres of Tybee Island was purchased from Josiah Totnow for a quarantine station starting in 1768 for enslaved Africans and other immigrants before being dispersed across the new colonies. The building was situated on the westernmost tip of Tybee at the mouth of what soon became known as Lazaretto Creek. By 1785, the quarantine station had fallen into disrepair and a new one was constructed on Cockpur Island. In the 1800s, Tybee fell in line with the larger trends in the U.S. tourism at the time and developed its economy to serve middle-class Southerners as a seaside resort to help combat asthma, allergies, and other alignment or ailments. However, it was not until 1887, when the Savannah Tybee Railroad was completed, that the infrastructure for tourism developed, and the 1923 construction of Tybee Road provided even greater access for tourists traveling by automobile. But not everyone was welcome to swim in Tybee's water. A 1930 brochure serves as a reminder of the racialization of Tybee Island. 2 million white population can reach Savannah Beach by automobile in far less time and with far greater comfort than a few thousand could not many years ago. To those who are, and as you can see, here's the advertisement. The man and the woman, $2.50 Tybee and return Sunday, Central of Georgia Railway. Okay. Said to those who are not automobile owners, exceptional railways facilities with low summer excursion rates offer opportunity to visit this resort either for a single day trips or weekend visits, or for more prolonged enjoyment of its unseasoned pleasure. Now it says, while Savannah and more expensively, the southeast white population could swim in Tybee's water and stay on its shore, Savannah's African American family were prohibited from accessing the beach and had to travel the greater distance to Hilton Head Island for a beach day. The region outside of Tybee is generally an anomaly in terms of the larger trend of social environmental dispossession and exclusion of African Americans from many beaches during the 20th century because of its unique history. The surrounding islands in Georgia and South Carolina were historically home to the Gullah Geechee culture. Again, the surrounding islands in Georgia and South Carolina were historically home to the Gullah Geechee culture, the descendant of enslaved Africans who to this day share a deep sense of place for the sea islands. This culture is increasingly under threat as their ancestral lands on coastal, and as you can see, here's the picture. Their first weigh-in on Savannah Beach, Tybee Island, took place in the summer of 1960. All right, so the culture is increasingly under threat as their ancestral lands on coastal islands face increasing property values as a result of tourism and land developments on the Barriers Island. Unlike nearby Barrier Islands, the beach on Tybee Island was a pleasure place for white folk, not for blacks. It was understood, and any black on the beach was on the job working for clubs and hotels. Musicians of color, however, were able to temporarily overcome Tybee's racial barriers with notable performances at Tabrisha by Louis Armstrong and Cab Calloway. Some were even bands in residence during this period. At the height of the civil rights movement in 1960s, activists organized a successful economic boycott in the neighboring Savannah, 18 miles from Tybee Island, and also in Chatham County, that lasted from March 1960 to 1961. Because of this boycott, Savannah was one of the first cities in the state to desegregate public lunch counters. Inspired by the lunch counter sit-ins, activists led a series of wade-ins in 1960, which began in Biloxi in an effort desegregated public beaches. Inspired by these events, Amos C. Brown and 10 others led a wade-in on Tybee Island on August 17, 1960. Brown reflected in an interview conducted by the second Arthur at his San Francisco church, his belief that the beach weighed in pushed a different kind of boundary in the civil rights movement that was in many ways more intimate than simply sitting at a lunch counter. And it says, and particularly for the males to be around, be in the presence of the white woman on the beach, that was suicidal, because at the bottom of this thing of race has always been the issue of sex. So even when we just reflect and think about what we did, it was like taking your life in your own hands. All right, so I'm just gonna stop right here. This is a very interesting article, so I think you guys should make sure you check this out. So it's called "You're Out of Your Place." Here's the title: "You're Out of Your Place: Black Mobility on Tybee Island, Georgia, from Civil Rights to Orange Crush," and written by Jeffrey R. Finney from Georgia Southern University and Amy E. Potter from Georgia Southern University. All right, so it was written in 2018. Very interesting article. I think it's a very good article, so you guys need to go ahead and check that out. And it was published by the University of North Carolina Press. And as I always mention, the website is www.jastor.org, JSTOR.org. So make sure you check out this website and check out the source if you guys are interested to learning more about the history of Tybee Island and the racism and the Orange Crush and the Civil Rights Movement and etc. So yeah. Who was that? Peace, brother Chauncey. Peace. How you doing, brother Chauncey? Thank you for coming through. Peace to the chat. Thank everybody from the chat for coming through. I appreciate you guys. Thank you all that has been subscribing to the channel, been sharing the content, hitting the notification bell whenever I come on. I appreciate that so much. Thank you for sharing my videos. That really means a lot to me. So thank you guys. All right, so I want to get on the last piece about the Gullah Geechee people. So let me talk a little bit about the Gullah Geechee people in the coast of Georgia. See, that's very important, because without the Gullah Geechee people, a lot of us would not be here. Now, I don't know if I have some Geechee in my family. I was told that I didn't, but there's a strong possibility that I do, because as I mentioned before, they on the coastal line, so they run from like part of North Carolina all the way on down to Florida. And I had a great grandmother that was from Jacksonville, Florida. And I had a grandfather that was from Rochelle, Georgia. So there's a possibility that there might be some Geechee folks in my family that we're unaware of. All right, let's go ahead and look at the Gullah. So let's go into the history, a little bit of history about the Gullah. All right, now I've read there's a difference between the Geechee and the Gullah. So the Gullah people are supposed to be the people of South Carolina region, and the Geechee people are those in the coastal region of Georgia. But let's see what the source have to say online. So the Gullah are African Americans who lived in the Low Country region of the United States of Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina, in both the coastal plain and the sea islands. They developed a Creole language, also called Gullah, in a culture with some African influence. Historically, the Gullah region extended from the Cape Fear area on North Carolina's coast south to the vicinity of Jacksonville on Florida's coast. The Gullah people in their language also called Geechee, which may be derived from the name of Ogeechee River near Savannah, Georgia. Gullah is a term that was originally used to designate the Creole dialect of English spoken by Gullah and Geechee people. Over time, its speakers have used this term to formally refer to their Creole language and distinctive ethnic identity as a people. The Georgia communities are distinguished by identifying as either freshwater Geechee or sea saltwater Geechee, depending on whether they live on the mainland or the sea islands. Okay. Now it says because of a period of relative isolation from whites while working on large plantation in rural areas, the Africans enslaved from a variety of Central and West African ethnic groups developed a Creole culture that has preserved much of their African linguistic and cultural heritage from various peoples. In addition, they absorb new influences from the region. The Gullah people speak an English-based Creole language containing many African loanwords and influenced by African languages in grammar and sentence structure, sometimes referred to as Sea Island Creoles by linguists and scholars. The Gullah language is sometimes likened to the Bahamian Creole, Barbadian Creole, Guyanese Creole, Belizean Creole, Jamaican Patois, and the Creole language of West Africa. Gullah crafts, farming and fishing tradition, folk beliefs, music, rice-based cuisine, and storytelling tradition all exhibit strong influence from Central and West African cultures. All right, so speaking of Geechee people, let's talk a little bit about Kwame Brown. So I read somewhere that Kwame Brown does not consider himself to be African. He said something about, if my ancestor built this motherfucker, I'm not African American, I'm African. I mean, he said, I'm not African American, I'm American. But he called himself Geechee, which he is because he was born in South Carolina. He was born in Charleston, and he grew up in Brunswick, Georgia, which is not very far. So he's Geechee. But the thing is, if you're saying that you're Geechee, you acknowledge that you are a descent, or you are a descendant of those who come from Central West Africa. Those who were brought from the central part of West Africa, which is like Senegambia, Angola, and they were brought into the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. And if you speak Geechee, you're speaking the African language that is mixed in with the English language. Right? So if I speak Geechee, which is nothing more than the Georgia, South Carolina Creole language, that's all it is. Geechee is just the Creole language, just like Louisiana got the Creole language out there. That's just what Geechee is. You know, the language Geechee. All it is just a Creole language. It's just an African language. A lot of African words borrowed, mixed in with the English language. It's basically Ebonics. That's all it is. So if you say that you're Geechee, and I'm talking about somebody like Kwame Brown, if that's the case, I'm not sure how true it is. But if he did say that, if you are Geechee, then you do acknowledge that you are a descendant of those that's African. Otherwise, you wouldn't say you Geechee. So if you claim that you're not African and you're just American, but you're not African, then you might as well not call yourself Geechee. You might as well not even acknowledge your Geechee side, because you're technically saying that you are of African descent, because that's what the Geechee people were. They were enslaved African people that were brought on the coastal line of Georgia and South Carolina. And they developed their own community, and they had their own language, which is consistent. As a matter of fact, the Geechee people, as I mentioned earlier, when I was in Savannah, two women that happened to be of the Geechee tribe, they acknowledge their African ancestry. They acknowledge their African lineage. See, the Geechee people would not be where they are if it wasn't for their African ancestors. So they keep their African tradition alive. They keep the African language alive in blending in with the English language. They keep with the African culture, the African tradition. So it's very disrespectful to the Geechee people when you say stuff like, I'm not African, I'm just American, and I'm Geechee. That's disrespectful. Because if you're going to denounce being African, you might as well denounce being Geechee. Oh, if you guys heard of Kumbaya, my lord, Kumbaya, y'all know where Kumbaya, my lord, come from. They came from the Geechee people. Kumbaya, my lord, Kumbaya. That come from the Geechee people. That means come, my lord. But let me go ahead and continue. So let's go down. All right. So let's look at the etymology. So it says the origin of the word Gullah is unclear. Some scholars suggest that it may be coordinated with the word Angola, where the ancestors of some of the Gullah people likely originated. They created a new culture synthesized from that of the various African peoples brought into Charleston and other parts of South Carolina. Some scholars have suggested that it may come from the name of the Gullah, an ethnic group living in the border area between present-day Sierra Leone and Liberia in West Africa, another area of enslaved ancestors of the Gullah people. British planters in the Caribbean and the southern colonies of North Africa refer to this area as the Grand Coast or Rice Coast. Many of the tribes are of Mandi origins. The name Geechee, another common name for the Gullah people, may derive from the name of the Kissy people, an ethnic group living in the border area between Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. Okay. Now, here it is. Go down the Dula or Dala. Oh, it's pronounced as Gula. Sorry. So the D is pronounced as G. So it's pronounced as Guala. So the Guala civilization had a large territory that stretched from Senegal through Mali to Burkina Faso and the rest of what was French West Africa. These were vast savanna lands with lower population densities. Slave raiding was easier and more common here than in forest areas with natural forms of physical defense. The word Guala is pronounced Guala. All right, so it's pronounced as Guala. It's going by what it says. It's pronounced Guala among members of the Akan ethnic group in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, which is Ivory Coast, the primary land route through which captured Guala people then came into contact with European slavers was through the Grand Coast and Rice Coast, present-day Liberia, Sierra Leone, Senegambia, and Guinea. The story of Gullah Jack, an African slave imported from Angola to the United States, may indicate that the word Gullah originated in Angola, as some commentators believe the word is a shortened version of the country's name. Gullah Jack's other name was Jack Pritchard because he was sold to a white man with the last name Pritchard. All right, so now let's go into the African roots. All right, so according to the Port of Charleston records, enslaved Africans shipped to Pork came from the following area: Angola 39%, Senegambia 20%, the Westward Coast 17%, the Gold Coast, which is now Ghana, 13%, Sierra Leone 6%, and Madagascar, Mozambique, and the two bites, Benin and Biafra, 5%. The term Windward Coast often refers to Sierra Leone, so the total figure of slaves from that region is higher than 6%. All right. Then it's going on to say, particularly along the western coast, the local people had cultivated African rice for what is estimated to approach 3,000 years. African rice is a related yet distinct species from Asian rice. It was originally domesticated in the inland delta of upper Niger River. Once Carolinian and Georgian planters in the American South discovered that African rice would grow in that region, they often sought enslaved Africans from rice-growing regions because of their skills and knowledge needed to develop and build irrigation, dams, and earthworks. All right, so now let's go down real quick about the origin of the Gullah culture. So I'm just going to read this part and then I'll be finished. All right, and then I'm going to read a little bit about the science. So I'm interested in knowing about the science. All right, but anyways, the origin of Gullah culture. The Gullah people have been able to preserve much of their African cultural heritage because of climate, geography, cultural pride, and patterns of importation of enslaved Africans. Enslaved persons from the central western region of Africa, originating primarily from the Mende population of what is today Sierra Leone, and transported to some areas of Brazil, including Bahia. The enslaved Gullah Geechee people were trading in what was then Charlestown, South Carolina. According to British historian P.E.H. Hare, Gullah culture developed as a Creole culture in the colonies in the United States from the peoples of many different African culture who came together there. These include the Baga, Fula, Kisi, Kipele, Limba, Mendika, Mende, Susu, Timne, Va, and Wolof of the Rice Coast, and many from Angola, Igbo, Calabar, Congo, and the Gold Coast. All right, so it says by the middle of the 18th century, thousands of acres in Georgia and South Carolina low country and the South and the Sea Islands were developed as African rice fields. African farmers from the rice coast brought the skills for cultivation and tidal irrigation that made rice farming one of the most successful industry in early America. All right. So, and going to say, as the rice industry was developed, planters continued to import enslaved African. By 1708, South Carolina had a black majority. Coastal Georgia developed a black majority after rice cultivation expanded there in the mid 18th century. Malaria and yellow fever became endemic. Fearing these diseases, many white planters and their families left the low country during the rainy spring and summer months when fevers ran rampant. Others lived mostly in cities such as Charleston rather than on the isolated plantation, especially those on the Sea Islands. The planters left their European or African rice drivers or overseers in charge of the rice plantation. These had hundreds of laborers with African tradition reinforced by new imports from the same region. Over time, the Gullah people developed a Creole culture in which elements of African languages, culture, and community life were preserved to a high degree. Their culture developed in a distinct way, different from that of the enslaved African Americans in states such as North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland, where the enslaved lived in smaller groups and had more sustained and frequent interaction with white and British American culture. All right, so let's go down to the science. All right, so let's look at the sciences. I'm just curious. So it says sciences. A pseudo scorpion species from South Carolina was named after the Gullah people and culture. A lynching species from South Carolina was named in honor of the Gullah communities in the region where the lichens grow. So let's look at pseudo scorpion. Let's look at a pseudo scorpion. All right, so all right. Anyways, well, I'll look that up later. But okay, but I see the name. I'm sorry. So the name is Nero Sharodium Gularam. All right, so it's the pseudo scorpion species that was named after the Gullah people, and the lichen was was named the Basidia Gullah Geechee. Excuse me, Basidia Gullah Geechee. So the Basidia Gullah Geechee, which is also known as the lichen species, was named after in honor of the Gullah community where the lichen grows. So let's look that up. Let's look at what the lichen were. These are the lichen. You can't really see them. I know they don't look like any species or anything, but this is what they look like right here. All right. So it's a composite organism that arises from algae or cyanobacteria living among filaments of multiple fungi species in a mutualistic relationship. So lichen have properties different from those of their component organism. Lichen comes in many colors, size, and form and are sometimes plant-like, but lichens are not plant. Lichen may have tiny leafless branches, a flat leaf-like structure, crust-like adhering tightly to a surface like a thick coat of paint, a powder-like appearance, or other growth forms. All right, so as you can see, they are a form of bacteria, basically. Okay, so the lichen are a form of bacteria. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a book that you guys can look into if you guys want to learn more about the Gullah Geechee people. So one of the books that I've came across is called Low Country Gullah Culture Special Resources Study and Final Environmental Impact Statement from the National Park Service, U.S. Department of the Interior, Southeast Regional Office, Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. All right, so you got the table of content, affected people and environment. All right. So as you can see, this is the peninsula. Right here on this peninsula. From Wilmington, North Carolina, all the way on down to Jacksonville, Florida. Right here. This is where you find the Gullah Geechee people and their culture right over here. This is where they at. So Brunswick, Georgia is where Kwame Brown is from. So he was born in Charleston, South Carolina. All right. And he grew up down here in Brunswick, Georgia. So right here in Brunswick, Georgia, which is not very far from Savannah, Georgia, as a matter of fact, it's not even far from Savannah. It's like right there by Savannah, actually. So that's where Kwame Brown is from. So he is Geechee. And again, if he claims to be Geechee, he acknowledged that he is of African descent. That's all to it. You know, you don't get to say you're Geechee and you're not African. That doesn't make sense. That means that you're not well studied and you don't know your history very well. Otherwise, you wouldn't even make that kind of statement. See, that's a form of self-hate. And that got to stop. That really got to stop. You know, people can't run away from the reality of who they are. But anyways, here's the map. Okay? Here's the map. And then you can see that little borderline right there. That's part of Georgia. That green line, that's Georgia right here. And then the other half is South Carolina. And then where the other green line is at, that's North Carolina right there. And then when you go down where the line is over here, this is Florida. Okay. This is Florida, and this is Jacksonville right here. Okay, so anyways, these are one of the books, and if you guys want to look more into it, you can just find it. It's called Low Country Gullah Culture, Special Resource Study and Final Environmental Impact Statement. It was written in July of 2005. All right, so it was written by the National Park Service, United States Department of Interior, Southeast Regional Office, Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. All right, so that's all for tonight. And I thank you guys for watching. Hello, brother, or I don't know if it's a brother, sister Valasa Nicolo Gullah. Hello, peace be upon you. Thank you for coming through. All right, so thank you guys in the chat for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. For those of you that's just coming in, you have to watch the video from the very beginning. I was just giving my experience on, my visit in Savannah, Georgia, and Tybee Island, which is about a good 20 minutes away from Savannah. About 20 minutes or 30 minutes away from Savannah at that. So I went out there to Tybee Island, which is now the beach. I had a great experience there, and I was also mentioning about my visit to Savannah. So if you want to read into more, if you want to, watch the video, you have to watch it from the very beginning, where I share some sources regarding to Savannah, Tybee Island, and the Gullah Geechee people. Yes, there is Gullah Geechee people in Georgia, okay? But you will find them mostly in Savannah area or areas surrounding Savannah. So, yes. All right, then. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, you all have a wonderful evening. And until next time, I'll reconnect with you guys. So peace and power and elevation be to all of you. This is your girl, Tiffany, and I'm logging off. And I'll see you next time. So hopefully I'll be able to come on here tomorrow, Monday, which is Memorial Day. I'll be able to come on here and I'll be able to do the video with you guys. So until then, take it easy. Peace and love and power. All right, thank you.